The concept of the unconscious lover reveals a profound and often unsettling truth about the origins of certain kinds of profound affection. When we say the love does not originate from the conscious personality, we are speaking of an attraction that bypasses the ordinary gates of compatibility and shared interest. It emerges not from the well-lit parlor of the ego, with its lists of desired traits and rational preferences, but from the deeper, darker chambers of the psyche, where the archetypes dwell. This love feels destined, fated, as if pulled by an invisible tide, precisely because it is orchestrated by forces the conscious mind does not control. The lover, in their conscious presentation, may be a fully formed individual with a job, opinions, and a history, yet the energy fueling their devotion springs from a more ancient and impersonal source within them. It is as if a god has awoken inside their chest and has chosen you as its earthly image. This is why such love can feel overwhelming and larger than life. It is infused with the potency of the numinous, carrying both the ecstasy of the divine and the terror of the absolute. This archetypal force, whether we name it the seeker of the anima or the hunter of the animus, is a primordial pattern of relationship and completion. When it is activated, it paints the beloved with colors of perfection and cosmic significance. You are not merely a person, but become the one who completes, who understands, who saves. This idealization is not a conscious deceit, but an unconscious enactment. The lover is, in a very real sense, enamored with a fragment of their own soul that they have perceived in you. Their deepest longing for wholeness, for the lost inner feminine or masculine, has been projected outward and has found a home in your presence. The complication arises precisely because this love is initially so pure in its archetypal form and so divorced from the messy human reality of the beloved. The relationship exists on two disparate planes, one in the mythic realm of the lover's psyche, where it is flawless and profound, and the other in the earthly realm of daily life, where you exist as a separate, autonomous being with flaws, needs, and an independent will. The friction between these two planes, the inevitable moment when the archetype stumbles against a human contradiction, is where the something complicated truly begins to manifest. The lover may experience this not as a natural adjustment, but as a profound betrayal of the sacred image, leading to confusion, accusations, or a desperate attempt to force you back into the ideal mold. The love is real, but its object at first is not you in your totality. It is the carrier of a profound psychological need for integration, making the foundation both incredibly powerful and inherently unstable until the conscious mind can begin to recognize and reclaim the projection. The shadow of complication represents the dark, unintegrated material that inevitably surfaces within the luminous field of such a profound, archetypally charged attraction. It is the hidden counterweight to the idealized projection, the necessary and often painful counterpart that emerges to demand its due. This shadow does not announce itself as a clear, external obstacle like a prior commitment or a physical distance. Instead, it weaves itself into the very fabric of the connection, manifesting as patterns of behavior, emotional reactions, and perceived barriers that seem to arise mysteriously from within the dynamic itself. These are the lover's own unlived lives, their repressed fears, their forgotten wounds, and their unconscious contradictions which have not been brought into the light of conscious acknowledgement. They are the parts of the self deemed unacceptable, too weak, too powerful, too needy, or too angry, which were long ago cast into the inner darkness. In the intense light of this soul-level love, that darkness is not erased. It is illuminated from behind, casting long and confusing shapes onto the screen of the relationship. Thus, the complication is often a form of projection, but a darker, more defensive one, than the golden projection of the ideal. The lover, unable or unwilling to face the chaos within their own psyche, may begin to perceive these qualities in you, in the circumstances surrounding you, or in the invisible forces they believe are keeping you apart. You may become seen as withholding, as the one who causes their jealousy, as the representative of a rejecting world, or as the trigger for their ancient sadness. The something complicated becomes a narrative they construct, a story of impossible timing, of your unavailability, of societal pressures, or of your hidden flaws, that fundamentally serves to externalize an internal conflict. This externalization is a protective mechanism of the psyche, for it is less devastating to battle a real-world obstacle than to confront the inner void or the internal war between love and terror, commitment and freedom, surrender and self-annihilation. The relationship, in its charged intensity, becomes the vessel that holds this disowned material. Every argument, every withdrawal, every moment of misunderstanding is less about the surface issue and more about the eruption of this shadow content into the shared space. The lover may genuinely experience these complications as real and external, and they are, in the sense that they have taken tangible form in the interplay between two people. But their origin is intrapsychic, until the lover can turn inward and say, "This jealousy is mine to understand," or "This fear of abandonment lives within my history, not in your actions." The complication will remain a haunting, persistent ghost in the affair. It is the psyche's inelegant, painful way of forcing growth, of insisting that the individual withdraw their projections, both golden and dark, and undertake the sobering work of integration. The beloved is caught in this drama, alternately idolized and blamed, precisely because they have become the central figure upon whom the lover's internal battle of self versus shadow is being fought. The phenomenon of the anima or animus projection is the specific mechanism through which this deep, complicated love is most often transmitted, serving as the conduit for the archetypal force into a personal relationship. Within every individual resides an internal, unconscious image of the complementary opposite, a condensed essence of all that is other, not merely the biological other, but the psychological and symbolic other. In a man, this is often experienced as an inner feminine principle, the anima, a figure of soul, of eros, of connection and mystery. In a woman, it is frequently the inner masculine principle, the animus, associated with spirit, logos, direction, and meaning. These are not crude stereotypes, but deep, guiding potentials within the psyche, formed by personal experience yet rooted in collective patterns. When a person encounters someone in the outer world who, by a certain quality of presence, a look, a creative spark, or an aura of knowing, resonates with this internal image, a powerful and fateful recognition occurs. It is less, "I have found you," and more, "I know you," from a place deeper than memory. This is the hook of the soul. The beloved becomes the living embodiment of this inner figure and is consequently infused with a sense of profound, preordained significance. They appear not just as a partner, but as the soul's counterpart, the missing piece that promises to make the inner world whole. The love felt is intensely genuine in its power, for it is the love of the psyche for its own completion, its own lost half. However, this creates the core of the complication. You, the beloved, are not seen. You are seen through. You become a living symbol, a vessel for a meaning that transcends your individual humanity. Your real thoughts, your independent needs, your mundane habits, even your flaws, are either unnoticed or unconsciously twisted to fit the majestic narrative of the archetype. A moment of quiet becomes soulful depth. A practical opinion becomes spiritual guidance. An ordinary disagreement becomes a tragic betrayal of the sacred connection. The relationship exists on a plane of symbolic necessity, not human negotiation. The lover relates passionately to this archetypal image they have draped over you, and their devotion is to that image. Their longing, their poetry, their sense of destiny, all are directed at the inner figure you represent. This is why such love can feel so immensely fulfilling, yet so strangely lonely. You are celebrated as a goddess or a sage, but never truly contacted as a mortal. The something complicated is the inevitable and painful process of differentiation that must follow, the long, often resisted task of withdrawing this projection. It is the slow dawning that the soulmate they seek resides in its potential within themselves, and that to truly love you, they must first reclaim this projected inner wealth, allowing you to step down from the pedestal and exist as a separate, real, and beautifully ordinary person beside them. Until this work begins, the love, however deep, remains a form of profound psychological autocraticism, a romance with one's own interior, using the beloved as its most cherished object. The call to individuation embedded within such a complicated love affair transforms it from a mere romantic entanglement into a critical juncture on the path of psychological development. This love, with its potent admixture of ecstasy and obstruction, serves as a numinous encounter, an experience charged with a sense of the sacred, not in a religious sense, but in its power to stop the ordinary flow of life and demand a response from the depths of the self. It is a summons that cannot be ignored, for it grips the soul with a force that feels both personal and transpersonal. The very intensity of the attraction, coupled with the seemingly insurmountable nature of the complication, creates a psychological tension that is, in itself, the essential catalyst for growth. This tension is the friction necessary to generate the heat that alchemizes the personality. Without this friction, one might remain comfortably asleep within the confines of the known self. But the powerful draw of this love, juxtaposed against the barrier of its complication, creates a psychic double bind that forces a crisis. The ego's usual strategies, pursuit, negotiation, abandonment, all fail to resolve the fundamental dilemma. This repeated failure is the instruction. It is the psyche's way of indicating that the solution lies not in manipulating the outer world or the other person, but in turning inward to confront what is unresolved within oneself. The beloved, in their dual role as ideal and obstacle, becomes a living mirror reflecting back the lover's own contradictions, their longing for union against their terror of dissolution, their capacity for devotion shadowed by their propensity for sabotage, their spiritual yearning entangled with raw human need. To engage authentically with this situation is to be drawn into the labor of differentiation, the difficult work of separating what belongs to oneself from what is projected onto the other. The complication is rarely a random misfortune. It is symbolic, a manifestation of the internal split that the lover must heal. It may represent an unintegrated aspect of their own character, a frozen trauma from their past, or a conflict between societal persona and inner truth. The love affair becomes the theater where this internal drama is enacted with high stakes. Each moment of longing, each pang of jealousy, each cycle of hope and despair is not merely an emotion about the relationship, but a direct encounter with elements of one's own psyche that have been waiting for such a vivid context to emerge. The call, therefore, is to cease trying to possess the beloved or to solve the external puzzle, and instead to allow the powerful emotions stirred by the situation to lead one back to their source in the unconscious. It is an invitation to gather up the projected fragments of gold and shadow, to acknowledge the inner orphan, the inner tyrant, the inner divine child that the beloved has been holding. To answer this call is to begin the movement from being unconsciously enslaved by the archetypal power of the experience, to becoming consciously engaged in the process of self-realization it instigates. The relationship's ultimate purpose may not be conventional union, but to act as the fierce and compelling guide that leads both individuals to a more complete encounter with themselves. The perspective that views these dynamics as symbolic rather than purely literal is crucial for understanding the deeper purpose of such a painful entanglement. To interpret the events of this complicated love solely at face value, as a tragic romance thwarted by bad timing or external circumstance, is to miss the profound dialogue the psyche is attempting to initiate. The entire narrative arc, with its potent attraction, its inevitable obstacle, its cycles of pursuit and withdrawal, and its exquisite longing, functions as a living symbol. It is an externalized enactment of a fundamental intrapsychic process. The beloved becomes less a distinct individual and more a living representation of an inner content or a psychological goal. The lost aspect of the self, the unexpressed potential, the realm of feeling estranged from thought, or the call of spirit neglected by a life of mere adaptation. The complication, therefore, is not an error in the plot, but the very engine of the symbolic process. It is the necessary tension, the grit in the shell that creates the pearl. Without the obstacle, the longing would remain latent, the inner confrontation would never be triggered, and the call to wholeness would go unheard. The complication embodies the resistance of the old personality structure to the transformative demand of the self. It manifests as whatever pattern consistently arises to prevent a simple, harmonious union, be it internal fear, external sabotage, or the lover's own contradictory behaviors. This repeated pattern is a symbolic message, a persistent sign pointing toward the specific area of the psyche that requires attention and integration. The passionate pursuit of the beloved symbolizes the soul's yearning for its own completion. The seemingly insurmountable barrier symbolizes the defenses, fears, and unintegrated shadows that stand between the conscious ego and that deeper unity. The entire agonizing, exhilarating dance is a metaphor made flesh, a story the soul is telling itself about its own journey from fragmentation toward coherence. To engage with this on a symbolic level is to ask not, "How can I possess this person?" but rather, "What in me is being so powerfully activated? What unclaimed part of myself does this person represent? What internal barrier does this complication mirror?" The specific qualities of the beloved, their perceived creativity, their elusive nature, their wisdom, or their vitality, are clues to the disowned potentials within the lover's own psyche that are seeking recognition. The nature of the complication, whether it feels like a wall of silence, a sword of judgment, or a maze of confusion, often directly reflects the lover's own inner relationship with that very potential. They may both crave and fear the depth the beloved symbolizes, thus creating an external scenario of approach and avoidance. By deciphering the symbolic language of the affair, one transforms it from a source of personal torment into a text for self-education. The pain is not rendered meaningless, but it is given a context larger than the personal disappointment of two individuals. It becomes the heat required for an alchemical transformation, where the literal desire for another is gradually and often painfully transmuted into a symbolic understanding of the need for inner union. The relationship's ultimate success or failure in the worldly sense becomes secondary. Its primary function is to serve as a vivid, compelling, and often painful stage upon which the drama of individual psychological evolution is performed. The concept of the alchemical vessel provides the most complete image for understanding the transformative potential inherent in this difficult dynamic. The relationship itself, in all its charged and conflicted complexity, becomes the temenos, the sacred bounded container where a profound psychological operation can occur. This is not the safe harbor of an easy love, but rather the sealed crucible of the alchemists, designed to withstand immense heat and contain volatile reactions without shattering. Within this vessel, the raw, base materials of the psyche are placed: the leaden weight of obsession, the corrosive acid of jealousy, the volatile mercury of longing, the fiery sulfur of idealization, and the bitter salt of disappointment. These are not signs of a failed love, but the very prima materia required for the work. The something complicated is the source of the necessary friction that generates this transformative heat. Without it, the relationship would remain in a pleasant, untested state, and the individuals within it would remain unchanged, their shadow elements dormant and their potentials unrealized. The vessel is defined and strengthened by its boundaries, the agreed-upon, often unspoken terms of the engagement, the repeated cycles of connection and withdrawal, the very tension that holds the two individuals in a charged and unstable proximity. It is within this enforced closeness, under this pressure, that the base emotions are subjected to the relentless flame of conscious awareness. The task, the arduous labor of this love, is not to escape the heat by fleeing the relationship or by forcibly removing the complication, but to learn to endure it consciously, to observe the reactions it provokes without being entirely consumed by them. This is the process of solve et coagula, to dissolve and recombine. The idealized image of the beloved must dissolve under the heat of reality, revealing the human being beneath. The projected shadow elements must be dissolved from their attachment to the other and recognized as one's own. The raw, possessive desire must be broken down into its components. Then, from this dissolved state, a new understanding can slowly coagulate. This is not a return to the former state, but a synthesis at a higher level. The goal that is sought through this alchemical romance is not the possession of the other person, but the production of a new psychological substance within the self, a capacity for love that includes wisdom, a recognition of the other that is free of projection, an awareness of one's own wholeness that does not demand completion from another. The vessel holds the process until this transmutation can occur. It forces a sustained confrontation where everyday life might allow for a convenient escape. Both individuals are simultaneously the alchemists, tending the fire and the contents within the flask, changing and being changed by the process. The complication, therefore, is the flaw in the vessel that lets in just enough air to sustain the fire, the irregularity that ensures the contents are constantly stirred. To see the relationship in this way is to grant it a sacred dignity regardless of its worldly outcome. Its purpose shifts from seeking a predetermined happy ending to serving as the indispensable container for a work of inner transformation, where the dross of childish fantasy and unconscious pain is, through sustained and conscious suffering, given the chance to become the gold of genuine psychological maturity and authentic connection. Let us conclude this examination not with a simple verdict, but with a recognition of the profound and often unsettling gift that such a love represents. We have journeyed through the landscape of a connection that is far more than a mere affair of the heart. We have seen it as a summons from the depths where archetypal forces stir, projecting not merely affection, but the very image of a lost wholeness onto another human being. We have observed how the inevitable complication is the shadow of this brilliant light, the unintegrated, unseen fragments of the lover's own soul that emerge as external obstacles, patterns of tension, and narratives of impossibility. This love is an encounter with the symbolic, where every gesture of pursuit and every wall of resistance enact an ancient, intrapsychic drama of the self seeking its own completion. The beloved is cast in a role of immense power and profound invisibility, serving as both divine mirror and personal catalyst. Through the mechanisms of Anima or Animus projection, they become the living embodiment of an inner ideal, a soul image that promises fulfillment while obscuring the real person standing before them. Yet, it is precisely this painful gap between the symbol and the reality that sounds the call to individuation. This complicated love is, in its essence, a severe and merciful curriculum for psychological growth. It creates the alchemical vessel, the heated, pressurized container of the relationship itself, where the base metals of raw obsession, jealousy, and idealized fantasy are subjected to the transformative fire of conscious endurance. Therefore, to receive the message, this person is deeply in love with you, but there is something complicated, is to be presented with a sacred, if arduous, invitation. It is an invitation to move beyond the literal and into the symbolic, to cease asking, "How do we make this work?" and to begin asking, "What work is this relationship doing within us?" This is where the educational purpose of such an ordeal reveals itself in stark relief. It teaches a difficult sovereignty. For the one who is loved in this manner, the lesson is to resist the seductive gravity of the pedestal, to gently, firmly insist on your own reality, not as a rejection of the love offered, but as the only way to honor its deeper potential. You become the boundary that forces discrimination, the human contradiction that challenges the archetype. Your very autonomy, your refusal to be consumed by the role assigned to you, becomes the most valuable gift you can offer, a call to consciousness. For the one who loves from this complicated depth, the curriculum is one of courageous interior archaeology. Each surge of longing must be traced back to its source in the inner void it seeks to fill. Each perceived obstacle must be examined as a potential externalization of an internal fear. The beloved's inability to perfectly fulfill the fantasy is not a betrayal, but a liberation. It is the necessary failure that forces the lover to turn inward and begin the work of nurturing the very qualities they so admire in the other. They must learn to love the soul image not by possessing a person, but by cultivating its essence within themselves. Thus, the relationship transforms into a shared vessel of mutual individuation, though the paths walked within it are profoundly solitary. It becomes a silent pact, often unconscious, to aid each other in becoming more complete. The pain experienced is not meaningless suffering. It is the specific friction required to polish two separate selves. The joy, when it comes, is not merely the joy of connection, but the more profound joy of witnessing and being witnessed in a genuine struggle toward authenticity. This process does not guarantee a lifelong partnership in the conventional sense. In fact, its completion may sometimes necessitate a parting once the mutual lessons have been extracted from the dynamic. The vessel, having served its purpose, may dissolve, but the gold of the transformed understanding remains as a permanent acquisition of the soul. The ultimate purpose of this dynamic may not be conventional union. Its higher function may be to serve as the fierce crucible in which two individuals are compelled to withdraw their projections, to integrate their shadows, and to confront the parts of themselves that only such a potent, mirrored love could reveal. In the end, this complicated love affair is a fragment of personal myth lived in real time. It is a fateful intersection where the psyche stages its most urgent drama. To engage with it consciously is to participate in one of life's most demanding initiations. The reward for this participation is not the guaranteed possession of the other, but the possible possession of a more complete self. The gold that is forged in this complicated fire is not a perfect romance, but a matured consciousness, capable of seeing another and indeed oneself not as a phantom of need or an answer to a prayer, but with the clarity, compassion, and wholeness that is the true and final end of all profound love.